How are you expected to live your life in the UK or in London if the average London salary is £40,000, which is higher than any other city around us, right?
I moved to London a couple years ago, and I swear it costs 3 times as much to live here than it does in New York City.
Britain is about as poor as Mississippi, which is the poorest state in America. And that's a precipitous decline for a country that was once known as the empire where the sun never set because of its wide-spanning reach and power.
For decades, the United Kingdom sold itself to the world as a wealthy nation, the birthplace of modern finance, home to one of the largest economies on earth, a country whose currency alone still carries an air of old money. But strip away the image, and the numbers tell a very different story. One that's left foreign visitors, economists, and even Brits themselves stunned when they finally see it laid out in black and white. This is the gap nobody wants to talk about, and once you understand how wide it's become, it's hard to unsee. Start with take-home pay. Median household income in the United States sits meaningfully higher than in the UK, and the gap isn't small. Depending on the year and the exchange rate used, American households often out-earn their British counterparts by tens of thousands of dollars annually. Break it down by profession, and the picture gets sharper. A newly qualified doctor in the UK earns a fraction of what a first-year resident makes in the United States.
If you are looking to make good money and live a good quality of life, then 100% the US is a better country to live in than the UK. Overall salaries are higher here, and it considerably favors business owners way more here than it does in the UK. You have so much more opportunity to make money. On top of that, the country is literally huge, so it has so much variety of where you can live. Low salaries, high taxes, and high cost of living does not particularly sound attractive to me. So, do you see blue skies and palm trees everywhere in the UK? No, didn't think so.
Despite years of nearly identical training, a software engineer in London can expect to earn less than half of what the same role pays in San Francisco or Seattle. And that's before adjusting for the fact that American tech salaries often come with stock compensation on top. Even outside of high-skill sectors, the pattern holds. Retail managers, electricians, warehouse supervisors, teachers, across nearly every profession you can compare directly, the American version of the job pays more, sometimes 20% more. Sometimes double. For an economy that once positioned itself among the wealthiest in the world, a wage gap this consistent has become difficult to explain away. Lower income would be easier to accept if it came with a lower cost of living. It doesn't, and in many categories, it's the opposite. Energy bills in the UK have climbed to some of the highest levels in Europe, driven by a heavy reliance on imported gas and a series of policy decisions that left the country exposed when global prices spiked. Household energy costs in Britain now regularly outpace those in comparable American states.
Britain is poorer than every state in America. Did you hear about this? This news is going viral, and I too am surprised to hear it. I'm a Brit. I've been living in America for 10 years. People were thinking, or British people were thinking, that actually Britain probably ranks, if it was a state in America, maybe the 7th richest state in America is how they would see Britain in it. No, the GDP per capita ranks Britain as below 50 in terms of state, poorer than Mississippi. Britain is poorer than every US state. That comes as a huge surprise to me, but it gives credence to the reason why I'm here in the first place, which is the abundance of opportunity. And I believe there is an abundance of opportunity because there is a higher propensity for risk taking, and there is greater volumes and abundance of optimism and positivity in terms of you can go and chase your dreams and do what you want to do and be who you are. I believe that is championed more so in the US.
Even in regions of the U.S. known for extreme summer or winter climates, grocery prices have followed a similar trajectory, rising faster than wages for several consecutive years. Basic staples, bread, milk, eggs, meat, have all seen price increases that outpaced average pay rises, quietly eating into household budgets that were already stretched thin. Then there's housing, arguably the most painful part of the comparison. Rent-to-income ratios in London have pushed past levels seen in many major American cities, despite London workers earning less on average than their counterparts in New York or Los Angeles. One-bedroom flat that consumes half a British salary would, in many U.S. metro areas, consume a third of the equivalent local wage, or less. The result is a country where people are working full-time jobs and still watching their disposable income shrink year after year, a phenomenon economists have started calling the UK's quiet cost of living crisis.
I moved to London a couple years ago, and I swear it costs 3 times as much to live here than it does in New York City. And granted, I did get like a 20,000 due to my role relocation bonus, but without that, I genuinely don't know how we would have survived up until now, because I make around like 180,000 quid per year. That's 225,000 US, but 60,000 of that goes to pension. Another 45% then goes to income tax, 13% of which then goes to like national insurance tax. Then apparently because our flat is in Islington, we have to also pay council tax as well. Point is, according to the spreadsheet, my monthly take home is around 6,500 quid or 8,100 US for somebody who makes 180,000 quid or $225,000 per year. And this is what we're spending just to get by and survive. Rent is, 2,400 for this place, but fortunately we have street parking and that permit is like 100 quid for the entire year. Third Space gym membership is 200 quid. Weekly date night in Mayfair is minimum 300 quid per week. Uber Black membership, just because the tube's crowded and not very safe, is 500 quid per month. Soho House is another 600 quid. Deliveroo, for you Americans, that's basically Uber Eats. That's 1,500 quid per month. Euroso hotels, travel related expenses, because we do like a weekend getaway to Paris usually. That's minimum 1,500 quid per month. Student loans from King's College, and I still have some undergrad loans from South Harmon Institute of Technology. That's another like 1,500. But look, I make coffee at home. I do run clubs on the weekend. We don't have a very posh lifestyle. Like, I would not be able to survive here if it wasn't for my Gam Gams trust fund.
Quiet, because unlike a recession, there's no single headline moment. Just years of numbers moving slowly in the wrong direction. Underneath all of this sits a structural issue economists have flagged for over a decade: productivity. Output per worker in the UK has grown slower than in almost every other G7 economy since the 2008 financial crisis. Some economists call it the productivity puzzle, a stretch of nearly 15 years where wages simply failed to keep pace with the rest of the developed world, even as the cost of everything else kept climbing. The United States, by comparison, saw both productivity and wages climb steadily over the same period.
When I moved from London to the USA in 2020, my salary jumped up by $60,000 overnight. And when I tell my American friends that I was earning £27,000 a year in London, they just don't believe me. And yeah, like, I wasn't doing incredibly well, but like for a graduate role at that time, like in 2018, 2019, 2020, like it also wasn't horrendous. Like, a lot of my friends were kind of like in that same 30K bracket. My rent was only $1.50. My health insurance was free from like the NHS, healthcare. Food was pretty affordable. My work was paying really well towards my pension. When I moved to America for the same job at a startup, they were basically like, here's 85K. I could not believe it. Like, I was on Net-a-Porter, like, oh my God, here I come. New wardrobe. No. Because we had to like live near the school my husband was going to. So we ended up paying like $3.5, $4 a month for a 1-bedroom apartment. It was tiny. We had to pay for our health insurance. No one was paying towards our pensions. Like, food was super expensive. I thought it was just post-COVID, but I think groceries just are a lot more here. So our quality of life was actually really similar, jumping from that £27,000 to, 85, which is mental.
Not dramatically every year, but consistently, compounding into a gap that's widened with almost every passing year since. Part of it comes down to investment. American companies have poured far more capital per worker into equipment, software, and automation than their British counterparts. Part of it comes down to energy costs directly affecting how competitive UK manufacturing can be. And part of it, economists admit, still doesn't have a fully satisfying explanation, which is exactly why it's called a puzzle. It's also worth saying the UK isn't one economy. It's several, unevenly stitched together. London and the Southeast pull national averages upward, home to finance, tech, and the country's highest salaries. But travel 2 hours north, and the picture changes fast. Cities across the north of England, the Midlands, Wales, and Northern Ireland report household incomes well below the national average, alongside weaker job markets and, in some areas, life expectancy figures that lag the rest of the country. That regional gap has no real American equivalent at the same scale. The United States has its own inequality, certainly, but a British worker in a struggling northern town is often comparing their prospects not just against America as a whole, but against a version of Britain that exists only an hour's train ride away and still feels out of reach. None of this stays confined to spreadsheets for long. Eventually, it shows up in real decisions made by real people. It shows up in the growing number of UK nurses and doctors taking jobs abroad, drawn by salaries that can be 2 or 3 times higher for the same qualifications, a trend the NHS itself has flagged as a retention crisis. It shows up in young professionals delaying homeownership by nearly a decade compared to their American peers, watching deposit requirements climb faster than they can save. It shows up in food bank usage across the UK reaching record highs, even among households where someone is working full-time, a statistic that surprises almost everyone who hears it for the first time, foreigners and Brits alike. For a country that still carries the image of global wealth and influence, the royal family, the historic architecture, the financial district in the City of London, the lived reality for a growing share of its population looks increasingly different from that postcard image. It's worth being honest about what these numbers don't capture, because a raw salary comparison flattens a much more complicated picture.